Part 1. Time and Aging. Introduction. Among the large collection of mostly manuscript pages that Christopher Tolkien dubbed the Time and Aging file are two half-sheets of Merton College stationery, on which two related but distinct texts, presented here as Chapter 1, the volume year, were written some 6 years apart. These two texts conveniently demonstrate that sometime between 1951 and 1957, Tolkien made two decisions that would have far-reaching effects on his legendarium. While the first of these decisions, namely, to make the sun and moon coeval with Arda, the inhabited world and its ramifications in and for Tolkien's subsequent writings and revisions, have already been documented and considered by Christopher Tolkien in the final 3 volumes of his monumental History of Middle-earth, and particularly in a section titled Myths Transformed in Volume 10, Morgoth's Ring. The second transformative decision and its ramifications have not before been presented. As the second of these two texts shows, Tolkien had by 1957 decided that the number of sun years, SY, in a year of the trees, or Valiant year, VY, should be greatly increased from the previous rate of 10 sun years equals 1 Valiant year to a new rate of 144 sun years equals 1 Valiant year, and thus vastly expanded the length of time in sun years of the events recorded in the annals of Valinor and subsequent chronologies stated in Valiant years. Much of the Time and Aging file, whose texts are presented here, is concerned with working out the perhaps surprisingly complex ramifications of this decision, not only for the chronology of the First Age, in particular for the awakening of the elves, including even just who were the first elves to awaken, the Great March, and the return of both Morgoth and the exiles to Middle-earth, but also for the periods of time occupied by the begetting, growth, maturity, and aging of elves. Tolkien's preoccupation with some of these matters in the late 1950s, particularly elvish begetting, maturation, and aging relative to men, has already been glimpsed in the opening of the C. 1958 text known as Laws and Customs among the Eldar, X 209-10. The Eldar grew in bodily form slower than men, but in mind more swiftly. They learned to speak before they were 1 year old, and in the same time they learned to walk and to dance, for their wills came soon to the mastery of their bodies. Nonetheless, there was less difference between the two kindreds, elves and men, in early youth, and a man who watched elf children at play might well have believed that they were the children of men, of some fair and happy people. The same watcher might indeed have wondered at the small limbs and stature of these children, judging their age by their skill in words and grace in motion. For at the end of the 3rd year, mortal children began to outstrip the elves, hastening on to a full stature while the elves lingered in the first spring of childhood. Children of men might reach their full height, while Eldar of the same age were still embodied like to mortals of no more than 7 years. Not until the 50th year did the Eldar attain the stature and shape in which their lives would afterwards endure, and for some 100 years would pass before they were full grown. The Eldar wedded for the most part in their youth, and soon after their 50th year. They had few children, but these were very dear to them. Their families or houses were held together by love and a deep feeling for kinship in mind and body, and the children needed little governing or teaching. There were seldom more than 4 children in any house, and the number grew less as ages passed. But even in days of old, while the Eldar was still few and eager to increase their kind, Feanor was renowned as the father of 7 sons, and the histories record none that surpassed him. And further, X 212-13, as for the begetting and bearing of children, a year passes between the begetting and the birth of an elf child, so that the days of both are the same or nearly so. And it is the day of begetting that is remembered year by year. For the most part, these days come in the spring. It might be thought that, since the Eldar do not, as men deem, grow old in body, they may bring forth children at any time in the ages of their lives. But this is not so. For the Eldar do indeed grow older, even if slowly. The limit of their lives is the life of Arda, which though long beyond the reckoning of men is not endless, and ages also. Moreover, the body and spirit are not separated but coherent. As the weight of the years, with all their changes of desire and thought, gathers upon the spirit of the Eldar, so do the impulses and moods of their bodies change. This the Eldar mean when they speak of their spirits consuming them, and they say that Erarda and the Eldalie on earth will have become as spirits invisible to mortal eyes, unless they will to be seen by some among men into whose minds they may enter directly. Also the Eldar say that in the beginning and still more in the bearing of children, greater share and strength of their being in mind and in body goes forth than in the making of mortal children. For these reasons it came to pass that the Eldar brought forth few children, and also that their time of generation was in their youth or earlier life, unless strange and hard fates befell them. But at whatever age they married, their children were born within a short space of years after their wedding, short as the Eldar reckoned time. In mortal count, there was often a long interval between the wedding and the first childbirth, and even longer between child and child. For with regard to generation, the power and the will are not among the Eldar distinguishable. Doubtless they would retain, for many ages, the power of generation if the will and desire were not satisfied, but with the exercise of the power, the desire soon ceases and the mind turns to other things. The union of love is indeed to them great delight and joy, in the days of the children, as they call them, remain in their memory as the most merry in life, but they have many other powers of body and mind which their nature urges them to fulfill. It is evident that the bulk of the text in the time and aging file are later than laws and customs, as shown by the use of the Quenya word heroa for body nearly everywhere in these texts, ab initio, while in laws and customs, as first written, typed, the form was herondo before subsequent correction to heroa. It will thus be seen that the extensive time and aging file is a series of elaborations and reconsiderations of the matters of elvish gestation, maturation, and aging raised in laws and customs, and related matters in light of the great increase in time spanned by the tally of valiant years. On the subject of dating individual time and aging texts, most of which are clearly of a piece, in order to reduce repetition in justifying a probable date for most of them, if I simply flatly state that the text is c. 1959 without further evidence, then the date is based on one or more of the following considerations. 1. The text uses the Quenya word heroa, plural heroar, meaning body, ab initio. There is no independent evidence that that word was in use until after the typescript text B of Laws and Customs Among the Eldar was made in C. 1958, CX 141-3, 209-304. 2. The text employs the name Ingar for the people of Ingwe, which otherwise occurs only in text A of Laws and Customs Among the Eldar, CFX 230 and 22, and in text 2 of Finwë and Muriel, CFX 265 and 10, both of which belong to what Christopher Tolkien identifies as the second phase in the development of the later Quenta Silmarillion, which he in turn dates to the late 1950s. 3. The manuscript in appearance and the text in character and content is consistent with most of the other writings in the time and aging file, including those that can be dated more certainly to c. 1959 by other internal or external evidence. The texts presented here for the most part fall into one of three stages based on an apparent conceptual progression in the period of elvish gestation in the womb. The first, in which elves gestate for 8 or more, usually 9 loar, as a solar year is called in Quenya, the second, in which they gestate for 1 loa, and the third and last, in which they gestate for 3 loar. The first two of these stages are exhibited in texts that either firmly or most likely date from c. 1959 or 1960. The third is found in a single document that dates from 1965. Finally, while I provide a glossary of terms in Appendix 2, there are certain Quenya words that occur in time and aging so frequently that I gloss them here as well for ease of reference for the reader. Heroa, plural, heroar, body. Fea, plural, fear, spirit. Loa, plural, loar, year of the sun, lit, growth. Yan, plural, yani, long year, equals 144 loar.